just this week, Washington Governor Bob Ferguson, he signed into law. It was Senate Bill 6091, and it deals with real estate listings. Okay, and I think it's just odd to me that we've gotten to this point to where we have Senate bills and governors signing legislation governing real estate listings. That's how crazy our industry has gotten with what's going on with portal wars and what's happening with this stuff. When I say portal wars, I'm meaning like homes.com, Zillow.com, Realtor.com. So what the legislation, Senate Bill 6091, does is it prohibits real estate brokers from marketing properties to an exclusive group of brokers or prospective buyers unless the property is concurrently marketed to the general public and all other brokers. So let me put that in English for you.
Okay.
So what that law says is that if I take a listing, I can't just sign up that listing and say, so let's say I'm really good friends with the owners of Coldwell Banker, or we have a network together. And so we say, you know what, I'm going to take this listing, and I tell my seller, the seller says, I'm not ready for all the traffic, and I don't want a bunch of people knowing necessarily it's my property's for sale. Sounds weird to some people, but sometimes we get this. And I want you just to kind of put it out there to your little network, Lance, just to your agents, and see what happens. And then maybe, like you said, if you're good friends with the owner of another company, maybe them as well.
And I could see, especially if it's a higher end property.
You're right in my show notes later on as that we're going to talk about, and that's the situations when this happens. And so Washington State has come out and said, nope, that's a no-go. This is not, if you offer that for sale, you put it out there, it's got to go to all the brokers in the MLS. Basically, it's got to be inputted into the MLS. So why, what is the debate on this, and why is this even something our governor's worried about or talking about? So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get policies of transparency in the market. So a lot of people feel like some of the real estate data has been guarded, only select people. There were good old boy networks per se of listings that were out there. And so they want to break some of that up. The other thing they're worried about is what has happened to competition via large mergers and acquisitions, because the business world has gone into this huge deal of mergers and acquisitions. And so recently we had national company Compass merge with another national company Anywhere. So a lot of people don't realize sometimes that these big, huge companies actually own multiple brands. So like Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Better Homes and Gardens, all of those could fall under the same brand, the umbrella brand. So what they're trying to prevent is, in a world of competition, is that brand going and saying, hey, let's do this. Now that we control the market and we own 4 of those 8 big offices in that town, when we take a listing for the first week, why don't we just let our own agents have access to that listing?
Instead of everybody.
Yeah. And then you know what? That might be a recruiting technique that we could use to get other agents to come work for our company because we have access. And then you know what? Then we'll have a competitive advantage to squash Kenmore because he is a independent boutique. And then we'll have all of the listings before he gets access to them. So they're kind of looking down the road of, in my opinion, looking at monopolistic issues that could be coming up. And Washington has decided as a state, this was actually hailed as it was championed by Washington Association of Realtors, which I'm a member of. But I will tell you, so yes, the Association of Realtors thinks it's a great idea. I don't mind it because obviously as a smaller boutique brokerage, some of my perspective is skewed a little bit there, but I do like being on an even playing field with some of these larger companies. Mm-hmm. However, I don't generally love the governor telling me exactly what to do with my listings, and in turn, some specific sellers. They have to be disseminated
to everybody
so they have access to it. The only exception to that is if putting the listing out there to everybody would threaten the owner's health or safety. So maybe if there was a privacy issue potentially, or there'd been a threat made against somebody and you didn't want them to know the address. It comes with some professional conduct issues for realtors. So that it could be a fine of up to $500 per violation. Ooh. But it could also result in a license revocation. So you could lose your real estate license with this, according to it. And there's going to be a lot of states. The only other state that currently has a ban like this is Wisconsin. And then RIP Wisconsin, weren't they one of the upsets?
Yeah, they lost to High Point.
Sorry.
In the
I don't
NCAA
think
tournament.
there's any correlation there, but I just thought that I would bring that up. So,
a double whammy.
A double whammy. So, but anyway, back to the real estate side of things. When you're looking at this, what they're trying to do is, give an indication of why. The argument that these other companies have come up with for having these private networks, and John, you said just off the cuff, you're like, well, maybe that works better in luxury sales. Was your initial thought?
Well, it would be pointless. You got a $1.3 million townhouse. It's kind of pointless to show it to first-time home buyers unless they just won the lottery.
So you bring up a great point. So some sellers might sit down with an agent and say, let's come up with a strategy that has a little bit more exclusivity, where it's not. Let's sell some of that exclusivity. Let's say that it's not available to everybody. It's only available to a select few, and so they're kind of trying to pump the price up, and that might be a strategy that they're going for now.
But theoretically, now they can't.
Correct, because that is not a health issue, that is not a safety issue, and so that's not going to be a strategy that they're able to employ in that situation, at least in Washington State. They're also trying to violate, what this, National Association of Realtors has basically a clear cooperation policy for our industry that says other agents shall cooperate in making these properties available. In fact, our local MLS has a 24-hour rule. So basically, if this goes out on your social media or you start advertising it, within 24 hours, one business day, that needs to be put into the MLS. Now, are there games that can be played with this system? Absolutely. Meaning that if you list that property on your social media or on your web pages at Friday at 5:01, then it goes out just for that agent's social media, just for that agent's network for Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. First 24-hour business day has to be listed in the MLS on Tuesday. So in that case, that agent's probably not going to be found to be violating this policy. And so we're going to see some of that. And in fact, there's pushback nationally against some of these policies. So some of these companies operate in all 50 states. They want to have a private listing network. They can't now, though, in Washington and Wisconsin based upon those laws. So the other argument is that you are legislating away the seller's right to choose their strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, the seller is saying, I'm a very private person. I don't want everybody to know what my property is worth. I don't want advertisements out there. I don't want it in the MLS. And so you have this argument for a certain subset of sellers Now, I would say in the industry, I've been in the industry a long time, that strategy probably only works less than 10% of the time. But it's still a strategy that some of those people wanted to have, which now they cannot based upon that legislation.
And in certain higher end markets, bigger markets like Seattle, Spokane, you've got more of those high end properties.
Well, yeah, and I mean, really, this is one time where I point out if people watch, $1 million listing. So you've got these California markets, you've got these New York markets. You've got agents that have built very, very curated lists of buyers that can. And so they focus all of their effort on those buyers versus the noise of everybody else who may or may not be able to purchase that property. So
yeah,
it's an evolving practice that we're seeing. There's also, much along the same lines, there were big national companies that announced this week what's called a coming soon listing. So there's also a strategy that people would use in the industry that they would put up a listing, put limited information about it, maybe the address, the general area was going to be in, the price. Coming soon to start generating leads and activity and data about how much interest there is in that property, but not officially listing it. And maybe it never even hits the market if they pre-sell it in that time period. So there are national companies that made deals with other national companies this week so that only their firm's listings could be posted in this coming soon portal. So that's also another thing to consider when you're looking at, once again, the thought is that you build. So people always ask me, well, Lance, I've heard people say you lose negotiating leverage. Well, give me an example. So an example would be like you list on this private network for $500,000 a house, and you goes out to your network and a few people respond and there's some interest, and they're like, well, what can I get it for? That's always the question from a buyer. How low can we go in, Lance? How can we? Well, if you're on this private network and they're selling you, well, you know what? We listed it at 500 on this private network. Not everybody knows about it. Only you know about it, John. Now, on Tuesday, if you'd want to put in an offer at 500, the seller said that that's what they're listed at. If we wait till Friday when it goes to everybody, John, it might be 525, 550, 560. What do you want to do, McKay? I know you really liked that red bedroom.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so there's some negotiating strategy that some of these networks were using. It's not a black or white, well, now it is because of the law.
Yeah.
But I'm saying there is a lot of debate about this in the industry. We now, though, have one thing I do like about it. We have very clear direction what Washington State has said. We'll be adjusting processes so that we comply with that law moving forward. And a lot of agents in the state are going to have to change some of their practices to make sure they comply with this as well. We will be watching this closely as we move forward. We've already had plans. We're in full compliance with what's going on out there, even ahead of it coming into play. I think it said in the next, it was pretty fast. In the next 2 to 3 months, this was a requirement. We're already in compliance with that. And so we are ready to go. And as always, it's the spring market.
Yes.
It is, by all intents and purposes, listings, weather, activity. If you want to be on by next month, though, we're doing a ton of consults for people right now. What you need to do to hit the market in kind of that sweet spot of April coming right up. And we'll be right back here next week.